I just wanted to drop in briefly to say I do think that what you're doing here is so valuable and important, and it was fascinating hearing the Sapere presentation and seeing you wrestling with the dilemma we all have to wrestle with, that you believe things are worthwhile in their own right, but you also, we're in the environment where if you want public policy support, you've got to have evaluations and show effects, and I thought you wrestled with that very skillfully. That's what I expect from philosophers. I just wanted to say I very much support what you're doing. I think there are several reasons. One of the problems we have in politics a lot of the time is we get so focused on the what we're doing and trying to explain it, that we're very bad on the why of why we're doing it. And I think that's a problem that is not just restricted to politics. I think it's a wider problem that including affects kids at school. We can get so bogged down in the mechanics and what they've got to learn and the rather narrowing of education that's happening, that getting them to take a few steps back and think about the whys of life, I think is wonderful, and it's part of what you clearly do. I also do think it was interesting hearing about a clear thinker, that anything that trains people to work out the difference between a robust argument and a poor argument, a well-constructed argument or a nonsensical argument, anything that trains them with that is so valuable and important nowadays. And one of the moments when a little bit of you dies in politics, and we shouldn't get away, is when you knowingly use a bad argument. And that is and you stand to keep us to the straight and narrow and never settle for that. When you think, well, I've only got 30 seconds and this won't really do, but it'll get me by. That is bad, and you stop us doing that. You stop us doing it, which is very important. And then finally, and this is something that I really do worry about, is and this is not just a media cliche, is the rise of identity politics and people who think that their identity is so fundamental to them that someone with a different identity couldn't possibly understand them or be able to represent them in a democracy or whatever, when empathy, not sympathy, empathy, the capacity to understand the position of someone different from you, is really quite important for the functioning of a liberal democracy. Your MP is male or female, comes from an affluent background or not from an affluent background, is a Christian or is not a Christian, but has a certain sexuality. But the task as an MP is to represent people crossing all of those divides. And that does require empathy. And one of the things that worries me about the people one communicates with, and even the challenges in a constituency surgery or visiting a school, but the people for whom the empathy, the requirement to put yourself into the position of someone different from yourself and see it from their perspective, that capacity is threatened if it's just your personal identity and its integrity that you bring to any situation. And I think what you do in philosophy is help all of us, remind all of us, and help us, I hope, to practice that empathetic capacity to look at something from a completely different perspective than the one we start with. So it's really important what you do. I think it's a great pleasure to be here with you guys briefly to support you. I'm grateful to Angie for inviting me along. And I hope that we see philosophy flourishing at all stages of education. I'm not really engaged much in school education at the moment. I remain very interested in university education at various levels. And the conclusion of, I'm going to be a shameless plug here, I've written a book about university education, and the final chapter is about the damage that is done by early specialization in English education. And I certainly think that an enriched, broad university education will include some education and introduction to philosophy. Thank you very much indeed.